When I traveled to Albania, I thought it was just going to be a different country, a different destination. But for the fact that I stayed here in Albania for over 3 months, worked out at different cafes, hit up different gyms, rented different Airbnbs, hit the nightlife, walked around the neighborhoods, talked to people, embraced the relationships, and everything else you can think of that a human will do, here we go. Cost versus quality of life. I think that's a big deal, especially if you are in your late 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you come to the realization that what you want right now is peace. You don't want that ongoing pressure. You want to enjoy life. So we want to focus on the quality of life because the cost of living in most countries, especially the USA, is pretty hectic and extreme. Quite honestly, this is one of the primary reasons I left the USA. Here, modern day apartments can cost a fraction of US states. And so, being here in the European side of the map, there's going to be a huge range as far as how much you can pay for an apartment. For example, this apartment is a one bedroom apartment. It's in a brand new building. It's in here in Tirana, and I am paying 890 American dollars a month. This includes utilities, this includes Wi-Fi as well. So if you're watching this, there's going to be a lot of folks that give you a different type of feedback because the circumstances are different. Now, for me, I was looking for convenience and simplicity, which means that I wanted to do month to month and I wanted a platform to take care of all of the policies and things like that. So Airbnb for me is extremely convenient. Now, when I first arrived here in Albania, Tirana, I was just inexperienced, right? So my first Airbnb was like close to $1,200. That's $1,200. But I told myself I'll take that hit as long as I feel like the apartment is comfortable and meets all my needs. And then when I'm there, I'll start networking and looking for better rates internally. And that's exactly what I did. So my first apartment was a one bedroom apartment here, also in the same district. And then after the 30 days, I was able to negotiate a lower rate of $960. And then I moved to a different property only 10 minutes away, and I ended up spending $890. Now, keep in mind that all these Airbnbs were 30-day stays and included in utilities and included Wi-Fi. But of course, over time, you're definitely going to want to minimize your rent. So these actual units where I'm staying at actually go around 500 to 650 American dollars if you do a 1 year lease. So that's where the true savings are going to be at. And I'm only referring to newer apartments. Of course, you can get a much better deal in other parts of Albania, but Tirana is basically the capital. So there's a lot of activity and there's a lot of convenience here in this particular part of Albania. Now, when we talk about daily expenses, everyone has a certain lifestyle that they want to wake up to and step into their dream. For me, what became a routine, and I suck at routines, I love spontaneity, but being in Albania, every location has its vibration. So when I would wake up, the very first thing on my mind became coffee. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, why not just do some coffee in the comfort of your kitchen? And that's exactly what you can do to save money. Remember, this video is not so much about how to save you money, but this video is more about how my experience was here living in Albania, Tirana. So as far as my daily expenses, travel. Let's talk about travel. So for me, I like walking everywhere. Now, I don't recommend that model during the summer here in Albania, which I'm experiencing right now, because the sun will cook you. It will fry through your brain. And the Albania summer here hits a little different from California, that's for sure. But however, I enjoyed walking almost everywhere here in Tirana because everything is within walking distance. So for example, I wake up and I go to the gym, right? The gym is about a 12 to 15-minute walk from where I reside, which is perfect because I'll start walking towards the gym, and that's basically like my pre-workout. That's my warm-up. So by the time I get to the gym, I go hard. Now, speaking of gyms, what the cost is here as far as gyms go, I went to two different gyms, and interesting enough, what I realized from traveling is that gyms are never cheap as far as price goes. Gyms always have competitive pricing, but it's almost like it's irrelevant to the rest of the cost of living in a European country or here in Albania. So for my gym membership, it was a little bit more expensive than the gym memberships in the United States for the most part. But I love the gym that I go to because it's spacious, it has its own private rooms, it has punching bags, it has everything that I need, and I'm only paying $50 a month. for that gym, and it's a month-to-month payment. Now that for me works out fantastic because $50, that's me investing in my health. So that works for me, and I hope it works for you. If you don't want to spend $50 a month on a gym, just know that there are plenty of parks. There's gonna be a ton of places where you can go for jogs and walks. And speaking of jogs and walks, just know that this country has been one of the safest countries. And even though as a male, I walk these streets at random hours of the day, and some places are not even well lit. There's never been a point so far in my stay here in Albania where I felt like that guy or that group of people looked suspicious. Like everyone has either minded their own business or is very friendly. So those are some of the things that stand out to me. So we covered coffee, we covered the gym. Now transportation. So there are going to be other areas that you want to explore that are further out. So if it beats the 45-minute walk, you definitely want to capture either a bus or a taxi. Now here's one thing that's really going to help you guys out when it comes to transportation. There's an application called Patoko, something like that, right? And it's like the Uber and Lyft of the US, right? Super convenient. You pay the driver cash, but you know exactly how much you're paying through the application before you even jump into the car. And I really love that. And so quite honestly, for me, during the first couple of months, I was using taxi services a lot because I wanted to explore past where I was staying just so that I can, experience more of Albania. So I didn't rent a car, and driving here would be for me very draining when it comes to energy because the drivers here in Albania, they're built different, okay? Their synchronicities are just top notch. Like there are people in scooters, there's cats, there's dogs, there's pedestrians, and these small streets that are busy. So there's honking, there's traffic, there's everything's going on. So for me, I would get overstimulated, and driving here in Albania, Tirana, for me would just be a huge inconvenience. It would be a mission and a task. So avoiding that, I would take taxis, I mentioned, and bus. Now, when it comes to the buses, sometimes you get lucky and you get like a bus with an AC, and sometimes you end up in a bus with absolutely almost no ventilation, circulation, and you're thinking like, what the heck am I doing here? I'm basically cooked. And so what I love about the bus is it's almost like 50 cents. You pay around 50 cents to get you to your destination. So that to me is extremely affordable, and a lot of people here take the bus to work. One thing about the system here is when it comes to buses, it's not really accurate. So either the bus is going to be running 15 minutes late, 30 minutes late. And another thing is when the buses are pulling up on Google, it'll tell you, okay, take bus 5A. But when you see these buses coming up to your stop, there's almost like no signage on the bus. So for me, I had to ask people around me. I'll say like, mafal. Mafal means excuse me or I'm sorry. And then I'll ask them the question. And some of the people here, especially the younger people, when I say younger, anyone that's, I want to say under 35 years old, most of the time will speak really good English. So I'm very grateful for those folks that speak good English, but I also made an effort to learn phrases in Albania. So if you're coming to Albania, learn some of those phrases, not just for the level of communication, but for yourself. Like it does something to your brain when you start picking up different languages. You start having lucid dreams because different parts of your brain are being activated. That's a whole different conversation. So yeah, so the bus signage is a little off. So sometimes you would, like as soon as it pulls up and the door opens, you have to kind of ask the guy, is this 5A? And some of those bus drivers are older, so some of them don't speak English, okay? So just know that. For this part of the video, I want to talk about the pros and the cons. The pros out here is hospitality. The people are very hospitable. They're very helpful. And of course, if you are coming from the US, things here might seem a bit more affordable to you. And so that really helps you and gives you the confidence to just look at every day as like, okay, it's not like I'm going to be stuck in survivor mode. So that to me is really important because then it helps your creative levels. A couple of cons would be not every property, not every apartment has its own maintenance standards that you would say, oh, this is by far the greatest experience. No, some places have lower standards. Just remember that you're in a country in which it's still modernizing itself and there's a lot of new development. And since folks that are watching this video, some of you guys use your laptop a lot, just know that some of these locations don't have the best Wi-Fi upload speeds and download speeds. So that to me is a big deal. So when I'm booking an Airbnb, I usually ask, what are your average upload speeds and download speeds? However, earlier we talked about cafes. Almost every cafe that I've been to had decent Wi-Fi speeds, meaning if you're gonna do like video streaming, most of these cafes have a bandwidth that will allow you to do a video streaming. However, just know that most of the cafes here usually have ambient music playing in the background. So just make sure you guys have a headset so when you guys are doing these video calls, people can hear you clearly and the background noise is not too bad, okay? I guess I'll be one of the few to talk about it. We're gonna talk about the dating culture. Now, in Albania, in comparison to California or the United States, the dating culture is drastically different. Now, I'm only going to speak specifically from my personal experiences, and I quite honestly love the dating culture. In fact, I can tell you that if I would have stuck around in Albania much longer, this is a place where you can actually invest in a real relationship. Although, remember, this is my personal experience. Some of the people that I met were incredibly intelligent and very aware. And what I mean by very aware is the people here, the women here, are very observant. They see your mannerisms and your gestures. It's almost like they're very in tune with the micro movements. And to me, that really stood out because in the States, dating is very shallow. Now, here, for example, if you ask someone that you find interesting out for coffee, it's extremely casual. It's like very little pressure. If you ask a woman out for coffee in the States, it's going to be either a hard no or in their mind they're thinking coffee. Like, what am I, in the 1960s, 1950s? And then they'd rather go out for like dinner or drinks. And that's cool. That's their preference. But if you're similar to me and you can really embrace sitting down with someone in a low pressure environment, and you can sit down anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes to get to see where they're at with their life and check out your timeline to see if you guys are compatible. And you guys can do that over a $2 coffee with real interaction and conversation, little distractions. That has to be one of the coolest things about the dating culture in Albania. And that's all I can speak on because for the most part, while I was here in Albania, I was focused a lot on work. But being a single man, apparently there are people that I found interesting, and therefore I decided to invest some time in doing what you would say like a coffee meetup. So I wanted to put that out there for those that are watching. Now, another thing that I noticed about the women here in Albania is something very important. They're very reserved. And what I mean by that is they will never really make eye contact with you. In fact, they usually walk either on their phone, like they're constantly on their phone, or with earphones facing down, which reminds me of college campus back in the States. But I've realized that once you speak to them and you have, they pick up on your intention, then they become very warm. And quite honestly, that's also very interesting that the people here in general are very warm people and they're here to help. And even though the economy is not the greatest for most people, I think that at the same time brings people together because no longer are your values revolving around monetary status or monetary gain. In fact, the real value is in the actual relationships that you build and the people that you grow old with. So that to me was a huge, I can say, breath of fresh air because the States is completely the opposite. It's all about status. It's all about vanity. It's all about that thing. And quite honestly, I don't subscribe to that. So all in all, Albania not only gave me these wonderful experiences and amazing insight, but Albania is one of the countries that has motivated me and inspired me to continuously look at life with an open heart and an open mind because you never know who you end up talking to. And the reason I say this is because part of my job here is to document and report. And the people that I sat down with and talked to, it was like being in a theater and all the seats are checked out and just me and that person. And so when you can have these types of conversations on the regular with people that are no longer looking at their watch or constantly looking down on their phone, I think that to me is something that I really cherish and I really enjoy. So thank you so much for having me here. Faleminderit basically means thank you, or Rosh, that's also thank you. Sie means hi. So there's more phrases, of course, but other than that, I just want to say Albania was truly amazing. Thank you for watching, guys. Take care. Peace.